Around the World Lit Audio 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel García Márquez. Chapter 4. Full Narration Script. Channel Intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Chapter Recap. In Chapter 3, the insomnia plague arrived in Macondo. The entire village stopped sleeping. Then the forgetting began. Names, faces, the word for ordinary objects. José Arcadio Buendia responded by labeling every object in Macondo so the village could read the world back into existence. He put a sign on the clock that said, "Time is the thing that passes and does not return." The gypsy Melquiades returned with a remedy. The village recovered. But something had changed. Macondo had learned that memory is not permanent, that the self must be actively maintained, or it dissolves. Chapter 4. Chapter 4. The first outsider arrived on a Tuesday. She came from the direction of the swamp, which was the direction things always came from in the early years of Macondo, the direction of the unknown, the direction that led back to the world the village had left behind and the world that, despite everything, kept finding its way back. Her name was Rebecca. She was a child, perhaps 11, perhaps younger. It was difficult to say with any certainty because she had the kind of face that could belong to several ages simultaneously. She arrived carrying a canvas bag that clinked when she moved, and a small basket. And she held herself with the self-possession of someone who has been traveling alone long enough to have made peace with it. She rang the bell at the Buendia house. Ursula answered. The child said, in a clear and steady voice, "My name is Rebecca Buendia. My parents are dead. I have been sent to live with my relatives." She held out a letter. It was addressed to José Arcadio Buendia and signed by people whose names meant nothing to anyone in the house, distant relations from somewhere in the mountains, people so distant that the connection to the Buendia family was purely nominal. A shared name rather than a shared history. But the name was shared. And in Macondo in those years, that was enough. Ursula looked at the child for a long time. The child looked back without flinching, without performing need or sadness, with the patient composure of someone who has already accepted the worst and is simply waiting to see what comes next. Ursula said, "Come in." The canvas bag that clinked contained the bones of Rebecca's parents. This was not immediately apparent. The bag clinked because the bones knocked against each other when she walked. A sound that everyone in the house eventually noticed, and could not account for. A sound that appeared at odd moments, when the child turned in her sleep, or shifted her weight. A quiet, dry knocking from somewhere in her possessions that persisted until Ursula finally investigated, and found what was inside. She did not scream. She was not a woman who screamed. She asked Rebecca, calmly, why she was carrying her parents' bones in a canvas bag. Rebecca said, "Because I promised I would take them somewhere safe." Ursula accepted this. It seemed, in context, reasonable. The bones were buried in the garden with appropriate ceremony, in a corner that Ursula designated for the purpose. And after that the knocking sound disappeared from the house, and Rebecca began the slow process of becoming part of a family she had never met. She was a strange child in ways that went beyond the bones. She ate dirt, not in the way that small children sometimes put things in their mouths, experimentally, once, immediately corrected. She ate dirt deliberately, methodically, in small quantities, with the focused attention of someone taking medicine. She was discovered doing this, behind the rose bushes by Amaranta, the Buendia's youngest daughter, who was approximately her own age, and who received the revelation with the interest of someone encountering something genuinely new. Ursula tried to stop it. She tried various approaches, reasoning, prohibition, distraction, substitution. None of them worked. The dirt eating continued quietly, discreetly, in corners of the garden, in a way that suggested it was not a habit Rebecca was interested in abandoning. Eventually Ursula accepted this too. There were, she had concluded long ago, things about people that could not be changed, only accommodated. Rebecca had arrived speaking a language no one recognized, something guttural and rhythmic that was not Spanish and not the language of the gypsies, and not any language anyone in Macondo had encountered before. Within a month she had learned Spanish completely, with the specific ease of a child who has been collecting languages the way other children collect objects, fitting them into her mind like pieces of furniture. She fit into the Buendia household with similar ease, too much ease, perhaps, for a child who had recently lost her parents, and was living among strangers. She helped with the housework. She played with Amaranta. She sat in the corner of the workshop sometimes, and watched Aureliano at his work, the young man who was already, at this point, spending hours at his work table making small gold fish with the intense focus of someone who has found the one thing his hands were born to do. She watched him with an expression that was difficult to interpret. Not longing, not admiration, something more private than either. Aureliano barely noticed her. He was 19 and living almost entirely inside his work. The fish were perfect. He made them from gold scraps Melquiades had left in the workshop, melting and shaping, and detailing with a precision that seemed impossible for hands that had not been formally trained. They were small, the length of a finger, and each one was slightly different from the last, and he kept them in a small tin box under his work table, and occasionally he would take one out, and hold it to the light and examine it, and find some small imperfection and put it back, and begin again. It was around this time that Pilar Ternera entered the story. Pilar Ternera was a large, loud woman, who read the future in cards and whose knowledge of other people's secrets was so extensive that it had become, over the years, a kind of power. She lived in the village and was known to everyone and feared by several, and she had a warmth about her that coexisted easily with the hardness that a life of reading other people's troubles produces. She read Aureliano's cards. She told him, "Your future is uncertain. I see a woman. I see a son you will not raise. I see a very long road, and at the end of it something I cannot name." Aureliano was not particularly interested in his future. He was interested in his fish. But he went back to Pilar Ternera's house, and he went back again, and what began as curiosity became something else, and the something else lasted long enough, and was consequential enough that Pilar Ternera was soon carrying a child, Aureliano's child, the first of the 17 sons he would father in 17 towns, though none of that was visible yet in the unremarkable Tuesday afternoons he spent in her house. He told his father. José Arcadio Buendia received this information with the equanimity of a man whose mind was largely elsewhere. He noted it. He filed it. He returned to whatever he had been doing, which was almost certainly something alchemical. He told Ursula. Ursula's reaction was rather more emphatic. She did not condemn her son. She was too practical for condemnation, which she understood to be largely useless. But she organized the situation with the efficiency she brought to all situations, spoke to Pilar Ternera, made arrangements for the child, established a framework of responsibility that would persist regardless of what her son's feelings on the subject might be at any given moment. It was also around this time that the eldest son, José Arcadio, the one who had been watching the gypsy girl with the silver coins in her hair since he was old enough to watch, made his decision. The gypsies had returned for their annual March visit. The girl was there. She was older now, perhaps 17, perhaps 18, and she moved through the gypsy camp with the same unhurried composure she had always had, as though certain things would happen in their own time, and there was no advantage in rushing them. José Arcadio went to the camp on the pretext of seeing the new inventions. He did not come back. He left with the gypsies. He left without saying goodbye to anyone, not to his father, not to his mother, not to his younger brother or his sisters. He simply was there one day and not there the next, gone with the caravan in the direction of the mountains, following the girl with the silver coins in her hair into the world beyond Macondo. Ursula did not accept this. She went after him. She left Macondo on a Tuesday morning, told no one exactly where she was going, instructed the household to continue in her absence, and walked into the mountains following the trail of the gypsy caravan. She followed it for weeks. She crossed the mountains, which was something she had done once before, in the other direction, at the beginning of everything. Following her husband's certainty into the unknown, she did not find her son. What she found instead was something that changed the history of Macondo more than any gypsy invention had. She found a road, a real road, wide, well-worn, connecting Macondo to the outside world, to towns and cities and the commerce, and noise and contamination of the civilization the village had been founded to escape. The road had been there, apparently, for some time. Macondo had simply not known about it. She came back without her son, and told her husband. José Arcadio Buendia looked at her. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "We are not alone." He did not say it with relief. He did not say it with dread. He said it in the tone of a man observing a fact, the tone of a scientist noting a result that changes the framework of the experiment. He said, "We have never been alone." Within weeks the first strangers arrived in Macondo, not gypsies, who came and went with their inventions and their mysteries, but settlers, people who had heard about the village, and followed the road and decided, for various reasons, to stay. They brought things Macondo had not had, new foods, new tools, new habits, new arguments, new music. They brought, also, new conflicts, new desires, new complications in the lives of people who had, until now, known only each other. Macondo was no longer a village at the end of the world. It was a place on a road, and places on roads are never the same as places at the end of the world. They cannot be. The road changes everything, brings everything, takes everything, connects a place to all the other places, whether it wishes to be connected or not. Ursula, watching the strangers arrive, felt something she recognized from a long time ago, The feeling of a woman who has organized a household perfectly, and then looked up to find that the household has grown beyond the boundaries she organized it within. She built a bigger house. She did not ask her husband's permission. She simply began, directing the construction with the authority of a woman who has decided something, and sees no reason to discuss it further. The new house was large, larger than anything else in Macondo, with a dining room that could seat 20, a garden of roses and fruit trees, corridors and galleries and rooms for guests and family and the future generations she already saw coming, whether or not anyone else could see them yet. It was the house in which the Buendia family would live for the next 100 years. It was the house in which everything would happen. Chapter Transition. You have reached the end of Chapter 4 of 100 Years of Solitude, by Gabriel García Márquez. In Chapter 5, Macondo continues to grow and change. New families arrive. A new priest comes, and with him, the church and all the complicated machinery of organized religion. And Aureliano, the quiet boy who made goldfish in the workshop, begins to change in ways that will make him, eventually, the most famous and the most solitary man in the history of the Buendia family. Chapter 5 is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new chapter arrives every week.